Hey friends, it's Kevin. Welcome to the Kevin Dairaghi Show. Today we have Joe McCall. Joe McCall, if you don't know Joe is a big friggin' deal. Like, this dude is awesome. He's a speaker, a coach, a podcaster. He does all this, but it's really what he's known for is niches are in the riches, right? A niche of a niche. We get into the conversation. He's going to be able to break that down of first how he identified it. His first one, which was like wholesaling lease option, and now he's flipping land. And it's just fascinating to see him kind of how he looks at it, dissects it, and kind of builds up his plan. Before we get into that, I just want to say thank you so much to our vendors. Lois Bands with Farmers Insurance. She is great. If you guys really haven't gone out and used her, I think you guys are missing out. The customer service and the fact that she knows what she's doing is awesome. She is in like the top 1% of all agents and farmers. So like, she knows what she's doing, work with the best. It's great. I like her. Thanks, Lois. So we got Jason Hudson with Red Maples Construction. This is a dude doing all my rehabs. So he comes in, rehabs the houses for us, makes us look good, passes occupancy. And dude, he's my friend. He's out there rocking it. Thank you, Jason. Adam Dairaghi, CRS Realty. So these are the guys, they're agents, right? They got a freaking massive team. You've heard Adam's story, right? He's been on the show. And now he is just able to help so many people by going through the process so much himself. He's able to turn around and help everybody else with property management. Adam, dude, you are rocking it. Thank you for being here. And Greg Mans. Greg Mans, Upright Construction. If you're going to do it upright. That's his phrase. But he does all my exteriors. So sidings, roofs, gutters, drains, all that stuff. Greg does a fantastic job. Thank you guys for supporting us as we grow in our viewership and outreach and all that stuff. So thank you guys for your continued support, and to you guys. So our viewers, we've done this all organically. We keep growing in our popularity, actually worldwide, which is kind of crazy. And so if you haven't, start watching us on some of our videos. We are starting to play a little bit more with our socials there. So continue to like, follow, share, and let's be a good blessing to others. All right, here we go. Let's go to Joe McCall. All right, friends, what a special day. Hey, it's Kevin Dairaghi. Welcome to the Kevin Dairaghi Show, live from the Garoffice. It happens to be a gorgeous day here in St. Louis. Garage office. Makes sense, right? Just you got the bay doors open. The sunshine is in here. I love it. Joe McCall.
Hey.
The man, the myth, the legend. So you are like an absolute stud. You are a fan favorite here in St. Louis. You're an author. You're a massive real estate guy. You have the podcast. You do coaching. You're a speaker. Is there anything you can't do, Joe?
Oh man, I can't do a lot of things.
You could beat me in golf.
I wish I could do two things at once really well. That's what I wish I could do.
Walking and chewing gum. Is that?
Yeah, I could do that, but like all of my entrepreneur journey has been one struggle of, not a struggle, but it's been a fight to find the one thing that I should be doing and the thing that I should stop doing. Like, I remember living, because we're both in St. Louis, and I was in trying to like do my corporate job. I was an engineer and do real estate. And I really struggled doing both at the same time. And I really came to a decision point in 2008, 2009. I needed to choose one or the other. And so I chose real estate, went all in on that, was able to quit my job. And then, as different, even different kinds of real estate deals, focusing on, okay, what kind of deals do I want to do? And I can't do two things at once. I can't do two strategies at one time. Like I either buy and hold or rehab. For me, I can't do both. And it seems like, you should be able to, right? If it's wholesaling or creative financing. I've always done best when I've picked one thing and focused in on that and went down deep into that.
That's actually fascinating that you say that. So I didn't know you're an engineer from your background. What engineering type?
I was civil engineer I went to Iowa State University, met my wife there, who was from St. Louis, and then moved to St. Louis in 2002, and worked for a couple big companies here in St. Louis. And I made good money. I liked the people I was working with; they were good companies, but I just did not like working in a cubicle, And so I started working out on the job site. So we would build large industrial projects and power plants and stuff. And I was working for the local power company here and for one of their subcontractors, and we were building a huge power plant up in near Portage de Sioux, if you know where that is.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it just was not for me. Leaving at dark, getting home at dark, because I had to be at the job sites early, leave late. Um, Even at a job site, I could walk the job, but I was still working in a cubicle in a job site trailer, right? So I had the entrepreneurial bug and I wanted to call my own shots. I knew even in a really good paying job, I was just one paycheck away from bankruptcy. If they fired me, I'd have to go. I could find another job, but I might have to move somewhere. And I was living paycheck to paycheck. And I felt like the riskiest thing I could do would be to keep my job. The security of a job really isn't secure. Um, it's it, I think sometimes the riskiest thing you can do is keep your job, especially if you've got some skills and you can do this stuff, work for yourself, start your own business. That's where I was. It's not for everybody. Entrepreneurship's not for everybody, but that's kind of where my head was at the time.
So, how did you choose real estate? Right, as an engineer, usually we're not as much risk takers. So, I'm an engineer from Rolla. Uh,
Yeah,
don't really use any of it, right? But it's one of those
yeah.
like, uh, how did you make the jump, and why did you choose real estate?
Well, I bet you do use it more than you realize in terms of like you think in terms of processes and systems and I
All right,
bet
you
it
got
also
me.
presents a lot of challenges because we tend to overanalyze everything and you know um, but that's another story. I chose real estate because I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. My dad. I think I maybe have some entrepreneurial blood in me, literally. Like my dad was a janitor for McDonald's in his 20s out in California, and felt like he felt like he should start his own business. It was weird. He talks about this. He says I felt a calling to be a full-time janitor to clean toilets for the rest of my life. And it's the weirdest thing, but he started his own cleaning business, moved from California to Iowa and then to Canada and then back to California and then to Iowa. And I moved, my family moved a lot. My parents split up. But he's later on when he sold his business, it was one of the largest cleaning companies, privately owned cleaning companies in the United States, the largest in the Midwest when he sold it.
Are you
And, you know, he had, hundreds of employees and very simple business. And, he just found his lane and, thrived in it. So for me, he asked me, hey, do you want to take over the business? I said, no. I didn't want to do that because it's a hard business. And I hope I didn't offend him. I still sometimes like, I feel bad because I said no so quick. But he sold the business, made some good money with it. But I knew I wanted to get into real estate. And so I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I had some friends who were starting to do real estate in 2005 and six. Back then, anybody could make money in real estate at the height of that market. But I got excited about it. I started learning, studying, and tried to buy some deals. And then I started going to a lot of boot camps and real estate clubs and started
Mhm.
hearing people talk about real estate. One of our mutual friends, Sean McCloskey, was probably my first real estate coach back in 2007 and 8. Um, and so, yeah, I started dabbling with it, and I started having success, started doing a lot of deals and making money. I was making more money doing real estate part-time than I was in my full-time job. And that was 2009 when I quit.
Really?
Yeah.
2009?
Yeah.
Huh. That's odd timing. A lot of people are getting destroyed those years.
Well, that's, I was doing a strategy called, I called it wholesaling lease options. So if you remember back then, a lot of sellers is super easy to find motivated sellers, harder to find buyers. But you could walk down the sidewalk and trip over motivated sellers. They were everywhere. They were upside down. They couldn't sell their properties, but they didn't want to be landlords either, but they got a job transfer. They lost their job. They moved or something, and they needed to sell their property, but they didn't have enough equity in it. Or if they did, they didn't want to give it all away. So I would approach them and say, hey, do you want to, I want to buy your property, but can you lease it to me for a year or two first? Or I would just send text messages. I did ringless voicemails at the time, and emails. I would find landlords who had rental properties, preferably like the mom and pop landlord, not the big institutional ones. I'd say, hey, do you want to lease your property for a few years and then sell it? I'd like to buy your property, but can I lease it for a year or two first? And so then I would get these properties under contract to lease option it. So I would lease it for a few years with a contract or an option to buy it in the future. Somebody said once in the book I read, like, the secret to success is to own nothing and control everything. And that's kind of the strategy of lease options. So I thought, well, let's do this. And so if usually those deals, there wasn't enough equity, there wasn't enough cash flow for me to want to hold it for a long time, especially since values were going down at the time. So I would tell the sellers, I'd say, listen, the numbers aren't going to work for me to stay in the deal for 3 years, but I'm going to find another tenant buyer that's going to live in the house, and I'm just going to sell my contract to them. So I would get it under contract to lease option. So I'd have a contract with the seller, and then I would sell that contract to a tenant buyer for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. And then I'd be done and out of the deal. I'd be done out of it. Now it was a contract between the tenant buyer that was in the house and the seller that was in the house. And I just called them wholesaling lease options. I would flip these lease option contracts. And, I would do, for 3 or 4 or 5 a month, and make $3,000 to $5,000 in each one. So that was enough income to replace my job at the time. And I thought it was cool. But a lot of people at the time were asking me, like, hey, can you teach me how to do that? And I started getting invitations to speak at different real estate clubs in St. Louis, and then outside of St. Louis and other states. And so I created a course, and I started teaching people how to sell it, or how to do this. I started selling my course and stuff. Started doing coaching, and then I started doing deals with people, like JV partnering on deals with folks. And so one of the advantages of selling education is that people bring you deals. And it's an easy way to find private investors. People bring you deals. And so I started doing education in I quit my job in 2009, and it was maybe a year to 2 years later, I started teaching and coaching as a way to make extra money, but also as a way to do more deals. And it's been a fun ride ever since. I remember when I started my podcast in 2011, being worried that I missed the podcast boat. I missed the wave for podcasts. I had no idea it would continue to grow like it has over the years.
And I think we just looked at it. And Joe, congratulations. Your podcast is in the top 0.5% of all podcasts worldwide. Dude, that is a huge
Yeah, that's crazy. I think that's the only reason for that is because I've been doing it so long. Since 2011,
well, people
right?
are showing up. So I mean, you got that too.
Yeah.
So you're the first guy that I knew that ever did wholesale lease options. Did you make this up, or was it like an underground thing, or did you just recognize that? Like, how did that happen?
It's funny because I'd read some books on lease options at the time, and I knew this guy who had a course on lease options. Still a good friend of mine. His name is Todd Toback, out in San Diego. And he had a module, like one module in his course he called it teamwork assignments. And then there was another guy who had a forum, a real estate investors, forums were popular back then. And his forum was called The Naked Investor. And it's not the naked you and I think of. It was like there was a popular show at the time called The Naked Chef. And it's about using pure essential ingredients, like, simplify everything, just get down to the naked ingredients. Right. So anyway, he was a really good Italian chef, Michael Carbonara, I think his name was.
Yeah.
He had a forum on this strategy, and they called it cooperative assignments, I think is what they called it. So there, there was kind of this fringe out there doing it because it was really easy at the time. When the market's going down, creative financing deals are super simple to do because sellers are motivated. And we haven't seen, we're starting to see it now, but it's since 2012. So in the last 13 years, we've not really seen a buyer's market. We're starting to see it more now, but like when the sellers are becoming more and more motivated and they're willing to accept creative terms to buy their deals, subject to owner financing, lease options, and stuff like that. So, and there was another lady teaching lease options at the time. Her name is Wendy Patton. She still does, and she's up in Detroit, Michigan. Super nice lady. Well, anyway, I saw an opportunity where these people were teaching lease options, and if they were teaching this little strategy, it was like a chapter in their book. It was like one module in their course. And I decided, man, I'm going to go deep into this. I'm just going to make that strategy a full-time business because they're easier to do. I like it. It's fun. And nobody else is really teaching just this one strategy. Oh yeah, since I'm giving shout outs, there was another guy named John Jackson who became friends of mine. And he was kind of doing a similar strategy, but in Texas. So I kind of like I had a ton of courses, and I started like just making it my own, started learning by doing, finding new ways to do it. And then, oh yeah, one more thing. I had a virtual assistant at the time who was helping me with marketing, and I was doing something, and she said, "Hey, you're doing something similar to what another client of mine does." So she said, "You should go see what he's doing." So I went to go look at how he's doing it. And then I started so I was taking all of these different pieces and putting it together into my own thing. And I looked up the domain wholesaling lease options, and it was available. So I picked it up and started and then I got interested in studying people who were doing deals and were now teaching people how to do deals and selling courses and stuff like that. And I thought that's pretty cool. Because my personal story is I've always wanted to be maybe a teacher or a college professor. I like teaching, and it's a way to make a really big impact on people. So that's when I started teaching the strategy that I was doing, and people started having success and started doing deals, and that was awesome. That was fun.
So I remember you speaking, and you were talking about the niche of the niches, and that's
Yes.
kind of where it's not lease option, it's not wholesaling, but it's like a niche of
Yeah.
a niche, and you just, I guess you didn't stumble into it. You studied it. Like you saw an opportunity, just like private lending. Sure, we all
Yeah.
use it, but nobody was really showing how to do it. And now that's like huge courses and seminars are just on that one little niche. Um,
Yeah. I like being in the niches, deep in the niches, the niche within a niche. Like I like to go an inch wide and a mile deep on this kind of stuff. So, and I don't do much lease options anymore. Although we did buy our own personal residence that we live in now on a lease option. Now we own it we have a mortgage on and all that. But like my niche now is vacant land investing, and it's really inside of vacant land investing. There's different strategies that you can do inside of that. I like to just keep it simple, and we mainly just wholesale cheap vacant land. We buy it for 20, sell it for 30, sell it for 40. And so that's kind of my niche now. But I'm also thinking, what if it stops working for whatever? I don't think it will be. People have been wholesaling land since the 80s, maybe even before that. But people have been doing it for a long, long time. But if I had to stop doing land deals or stop teaching land deals for whatever reason, let's say the government says it's illegal to buy and sell land anymore, or we have to give it all back to the Native Americans. I'm just saying, what if something like that happened? I would find another niche. I would find something else that not a lot of people are doing there's some interest in a new twist, a new hook, a new angle, and I would start thinking about that. And, um, like, for example, there's a lot of people teaching how to invest in tax liens and tax certificates, right? To buying properties at the foreclosure auctions but usually those people that are teaching it are teaching how to, it's big, general, broad, and their main emphasis is on houses, right? Go find vacant properties or houses that have tax liens on them, bid on the tax lien or whatever, and then there's different strategies with that. But no one's really teaching how to do tax liens just for land. And so I know some people that have done this, who are buying vacant land tax liens and certificates or deeds or whatever, and either holding them long term for interest, or foreclosing on them and then selling them. So I would spend a lot of time learning that, doing a bunch of deals, and learning the ins and outs of that. And I would probably create a program on how to flip tax liens, tax auctions on vacant land. So that's like a niche within a niche. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of those around there if you actually open your eyes and look and study the market. Another example of a niche within a niche might be, what's this thing now that everybody's talking about where you rent out the room instead of co-living?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
Oh geez, I know it with the like the sober living where you rent a bed or there's a couple beds in a room.
Like co-living, I think it's called, right? That's kind of a trend thing with niche within a niche, right? So there's always those things that pop up, and when you learn one and you do it and you start having success, that's great, because then you can really stand out and leave a mark.
I would say strongly that is something that you have done, Joe, already. It's awesome, man. Just to think you started not that long ago. That's kind of fascinating, really. So in this process, Joe, I use the term forging moment, right? So you left obviously engineering, you jumped into, you had a little bit of a roadmap, right? A little landing strip to kind of get off the ground before you jumped full time. But then starting the niche inside a niche, starting this coaching, starting the land stuff. So there's got to be some type of forging moment. And by forging moment, I had an episode about Eads Bridge. I love history, Joe. And like you could pull out facts from a real history event. So Eads Bridge was made here post Civil War. At the time, the building ingredients, really, you're a civil engineer, you got this, right? So you had wood, you had stone, and you had iron. And to do what needed to be done for the Mississippi River, right, over a mile long, had to be so tall, the currents, the sandy loam, those materials just couldn't do it, right? 1 in 4 bridges would fall. And it wasn't the government, it was capitalism. It was entrepreneurs, right, that were pushing this forward. What had to happen, long story short, is iron needed to become steel. You need the heat, you need the pressure, you need additives, right, to make it stronger. And you also need to pull out the impurities, right? Just like people, we need healthy habits. We need to stop bad things. So steel was the key to be able to span the Mississippi River. And because of that, Andrew Carnegie, who was like the guy over it, ended up using that for the railroads and then structural steel, and basically made an empire in all the cities across America, all because of that forging moment getting across the Mississippi River.
So I didn't realize Andrew Carnegie was involved.
Yeah, he was like the superintendent. I think the company he was working for was like Keystone or something like that. So it's awesome when you like unravel this story.
And those of you not knowing,
you're a civil somewhere, you're just a project guy, but you have responsibilities, and it's like whatever it took to get that done ends up being the skill that you can come out and be dominant and basically build the empire, which is the Carnegie Foundation and all that stuff. Like that's wow. I love it, and it's down to those hard days, right? Because when you read his stuff, struggling to pay the bills or like begging for money, like, give me a shot. I think I got this. And now steel is what everything's done with. Just kind of awesome.
That's funny. I did not. 1865, the Keystone Bridge Company was founded by Andrew Carnegie.
Oh, are you fact checking me right now?
Yeah. That's crazy.
Real time.
I had
Awesome.
no idea. Um,
Well,
but what
that's
was
why
he
I'm
doing
here.
before?
So he,
Um,
Tom Scott was his mentor, and Tom Scott was a railroad guy. So he started as like a little kid working underneath him. Just saw how he managed the railroads and whatnot, and then kind of he was just an apprentice to that guy. Tom Scott stayed in the railroads until he got destroyed by Vanderbilt. Um, no, it wasn't Vanderbilt. It was Rockefeller. Uh,
yeah,
just yeah, fascinating stories to watch these how all these titans kind of commingle and whatnot.
yeah. No,
So
that's really
all that
cool.
said,
I
Joe,
want to study this after we're done here. That's super cool. I knew there was I knew the significance of the Eads Bridge. And by the way, this is a bridge in St. Louis. For those of you who don't know, it's still used today.
yeah,
Um, and it was built in the 1870s. Work began in 1867.
yeah, I think it was done in
Um,
'93.
wow.
I don't know. I'd have to fact. I don't remember that offhand.
But at the time, yeah, it was revolutionary the way they did it. But so okay, cool. What was your question?
Okay, sorry, I got
What
off.
was my forge moment?
Yeah, what would be like a Joe McCall forging moment where you went from one thing and you had to dig down, or like you thought it was all bad things? What's happening to me, not for me. That when was a mindset shift that you had to go
Hmm.
through to become who it is you are now?
Well, I think what's funny. Big moment in my life was when we have 4 kids and we homeschooled our 4 kids. The youngest is 14 now, and they're going to private school now. But we have a mutual friend, Sean McCloskey. Sean introduced me to this concept through Life and Air with another guy named Steve Cook of designing a vision for your life first, and then designing a business around that. So, um, I spent a lot of time thinking about what do I want my life to look like. I don't want to work super hard and then when I'm finally 65 years old, retire and then spend time with my family and then go travel and see the world and all that. So I thought, I'm working from home. All I need is a laptop and a cell phone. Why can't I do deals from anywhere in the world? And I had a wholesaling operation. This was probably 2012. And I was doing a lot of creative financing deals, but I was like, I saw a bunch of money coming back into the market in terms of like hedge funds were now starting to buy up tons and tons of real estate in St. Louis. And the people that were succeeding were the ones that had the connections with those hedge funds. So this was 13 years ago. And so I saw an opportunity there. And I thought, I think I need to pivot back into more cash wholesaling, not lease option wholesaling. Um, and so then I started thinking about, all right, well, let's do this. And I got an acquisitions manager. We started doing 3, 4, 5 deals a week, wholesaling these deals.
Okay.
And it was a lot of work. And I was stuck in an office and I was renting an office from somebody else. And I was like, man, I don't know if this is what I was signing up for, right? Because I'm even though I'm got the team that does everything, like this is a lot of work and I'm still working way too hard. And no matter how many deals I do, I still get paid the same because as I'm growing and I've got more overhead and all this stuff. So I was listening to another guy in our office that I was renting next door, and I could hear him talk to somebody, and he was saying, well, let's write down everything that you do. And he wrote it all. They wrote down everything on this board. And he says, all right, let's ask yourself a real simple question here. How can you do none of this? I thought, that's interesting. This guy was asking this other guy, this is all the stuff you have to do in your business to do a deal or whatever it was. And he said, start thinking bigger and start asking better questions like, how can I do none of this? How can I get somebody else to do all of this for me? And it starts with asking those kinds of better questions. And I thought, so I started writing down, I knew I wanted to travel to Europe with our kids for like months at a time. I wanted to start traveling 3 or 4 months. I wanted to go on an RV trip for 2 or 3 months at a time. And so I started writing down all of the things that you can do to do a deal from beginning to end. And I asked myself a question: how can I get somebody else to do this all for me? And I started looking at, okay, well, I have a local assistant who can kind of manage the marketing. I've got this company that can do, I was doing a lot of direct mail at the time. I can hire a virtual assistant to take the phone calls, and do the pre-screening. And I started talking to other wholesalers that were doing a lot of deals. And I said, hey, what if I do the marketing, get the leads, pre-screen them, and give them to you, pre-screened leads, and you wholesale the deal. You take it from there, and we split the profits, net profits 50-50. Would that be fair? And they were like, yeah. And then I started thinking, oh, okay. And I started thinking about all my network, and I knew about 4 other wholesalers in about 4 other cities. And so within a few months, now I'm doing more deals than I was before by partnering with local wholesalers. So I would do the marketing, I would manage the CRM, the pre-screening with my assistant at the time. And so we started wholesaling deals in 4 different cities by doing that. And then we subsequently took my wife and my 4 kids to Europe for 2 months once and 3 months for another time. We kind of headquartered. We were in Prague, and then we'd travel from there. And I would work a couple hours a day, but nothing much. And then we did an RV trip for 3 months around the northwestern corner of the U.S. And so this was working really well. So then, of course, what do you do when you find something that's working really well? You create a course. So I created a course coaching program called Automated Wholesaling. And I started teaching people how to do what I was doing. And had a lot of students have success with it. Basically, just do the marketing, pre-screen the leads, find other boots on the ground wholesalers that were not good at marketing. They were not good at managing leads. They were very unorganized, but they were good at talking to the sellers, and they had the buyers, they had the money, they could wholesale these deals really fast. So I started partnering with other people. So, and I started teaching people how to do that, and it was great. But for me, I guess one of those pivoting moments was listening to another guy talk to another guy and asking that question: how can you do none of this stuff? And so it started forcing me back in my engineering brain of like, okay, developing systems and tools and processes. And I somewhere I heard of this: the 3 keys to success is marketing, automation, and delegation. And so I've always been a student of marketing. Okay, that's cool. Marketing is, the foundation of any business. Automation are the tools and the systems. But then delegation is finding the people to operate those systems and stuff like that. And that's when I started thinking about, and then now people talk about ask who, not how. And it's kind of a similar concept,
So now with AI coming out, how does some of this, have you started embracing that?
A little bit, but nothing can replace you talking to a seller. I call it belly button to belly button, right? Like you're talking to a seller or a buyer, private investors, right? Like you can't outsource that. You can't outsource talking to a seller, asking them questions about the property, following up. When you're talking to them 6 months later, you're looking at your notes saying, "Oh yeah, I see here you were, you were in vacation in Florida. How did that vacation go?" Or like, so you'll, especially as it's very competitive now. Like if you want to stand out above your competition, you need to be real. You need to be a person. And I remember I interviewed a guy who was doing a lot of deals, and he says he measures success not by the number of deals that he does, but how many hugs he gets from sellers. And I thought that's interesting. And I said, what do you mean by that? He says, well, when I'm meeting with a seller, and he was a guy who is old school, he wants to go meet a seller in person, walk the house, he's like, man, I just want to help them. And if I can help them sell their property, whether it's me or a realtor or somebody else, like I want them to like not feel like I'm trying to take advantage of them. And, he measures success on how many hugs that he gets. That was interesting. It's a different way to look at it. And it's interesting though, when you have that focus, you actually do make more money because people will see that and you become a genuine, real person. And you can't outsource to AI that kind of stuff, right? But I use AI a lot. I don't use AI, and I don't know if I ever will, to like call sellers or to answer the phones. Um, and I know people that are doing that and are doing really well. And maybe I'm just getting old, but like I just don't see that working.
Are
Um,
you still doing outbound calls, Joe?
Sometimes we'll do outbound cold calling, not much anymore. I'm still direct mail works, man. It works so well. We're getting still today with land, we're getting 3 to 5, sometimes 10% response rates on our direct mail. When we were doing direct mail with houses, we were lucky if we got 1% response rates. So we're getting 3 to 4 or 5 times higher response rates. So direct mail works because the lead is calling you. It's just a different quality lead. When you're outbound calling, you're interrupting them. It's just, you know, you have a lot more to overcome. When they're calling you and you're answering the phone or you're calling them back, the positioning is completely different. It's just way easier. One of the things now my students are having a lot of success doing, they don't have much of a budget. So they can't spend, $1,000 a month. They can't send 1,000 postcards a week. But what I'm teaching them to do, and I used to do this, is handwrite a letter. Super simple. Hey Jim, my husband and I are looking to buy some land in the area, and we see you have this 2-acre lot in XYZ area. If you're interested in selling, call us. Thanks. Woman's name. And then it's a yellow handwritten letter. And then crumple it up, fold it into fourths, put it in an invitation envelope, handwrite the address on the envelope, put a real stamp on it, make it a little crooked. And I have students right now that are getting 15 to 20% response rates with that. So if they're sending out 100 of those letters, and they just send like 20 a day, if they send out 100, they're getting 15 to 20 calls from that, which is, and then you think about it, it's a personal invitation. They're reading it and they feel some thickness to the envelope, and then they open it, they flap, and they see a crumpled up letter in there. You could write something cute on there. You could say something like, "Don't throw me away." But then they're reading it. They're like, "Oh, this is different." And this is a lady with her husband. They're looking to buy some land. And so you're more likely to get a phone call. And so those kinds of leads are super important. You don't want to send a lead like that to an AI bot, right? And you don't want an AI bot to call them back and then make the seller jump through a bunch of hoops and ask them a bunch of
Yeah.
questions just so that they can get you on the phone. Why not just answer the phone when they call, right? Like, what's so difficult about that? When that seller calls, answer the phone, talk to them, ask them some questions. And it's so simple to stand out, to stand above your quote unquote competition by doing these things.
I think you nailed it. To use different words, it's quantity versus quality. Like,
Yeah.
if your highest and best use could be writing 5 personalized letters instead of 500 mass mail, which, I mean, if you're motivated enough, you open the letter. But for the most part, you see that, like, think of how you open the mail. Most of my mail doesn't even get inside, right? Rip trash, rip trash. You know what it is
But
already before you do it.
mail still gets read. Like people think it's old school, especially younger kids. They're like, who reads the mail anymore? Well, younger kids don't own houses, right? Younger kids are not landlords who own 100 rental properties that they're sick and tired of. Younger kids don't own vacant land for 20 years that they just inherited from their deceased husband or whatever, right? So like these people are generally older. They still read their direct mail, and you have very little competition anymore in direct mail. And if there's things you can do to get that letter open. You can send a postcard, and that postcard will at least get flipped and read. And so it still works. It works really well.
That's awesome. Um, I agree. I think now that so much stuff is automated, or those robocalls, or all this, like, think of how many emails you get just bombarding your inbox. Any of those get read? Nope. Delete, delete, spam. Like, compared to
Yeah.
like a real honest person that's calling.
I
Or
guarantee you, Kevin. I've not been super active in St. Louis for probably 5 years, but back then, the guys that I knew that were doing the most deals in St. Louis were the ones that had their phones and they answered their phones, right? You could call them and they would answer. If they wouldn't answer, they'd call you back right away. Right?
Right.
When a seller calls, hey, how you doing? What? You answer your phone, because your sellers aren't expecting somebody to answer their phone. They're expecting a VA in the Philippines or somebody with broken English to answer the phone. But no, it's you, right? When a buyer calls, you're answering. We've done so many deals from buyers who say, you know what? The only reason I'm buying deals from you and not some other dingaling is you're the only one who answers the phones when I call, right? It's just a lost art. Realtors don't do it, right? But as an investor, if you wanted to stand out in a competitive market, I'm telling you, all you need to do is answer the phone, and you can do double the deals of anybody else. And I bet you right now, Kevin, there's people in St. Louis still doing that. They're old school. They answer the phones. They go meet the sellers in person. Everyone's trying to automate it and make it use AI and trying to take all these shortcuts. That's fine. That could work. Maybe it's a numbers game. But the guys that are doing the most deals with the biggest profits are not afraid to be old school.
Vintage is what I was told. So I had some old fraternity shirts. My nephew joined the same fraternity, different school, and I was like, "Oh, hey, you want some of my old shirts?" He's like, "Oh man, vintage." And I was like, "Oh, like they're not that old."
When did you graduate?
I graduated college in 03.
Oh, 03.
So I was
That's
I was
cool.
a Raleigh guy, engineering,
Yeah, yeah.
industrial engineering. Um, so one thing I thought that was interesting, I've noticed in my life, like you become a little bit of the coaches you follow, like you pick up some of those traits. Knowing that you have some McCloskey heritage in your story, seeing you build up, have the office, have the teams, have all the stress of doing all these deals, like was that something you were following him, or was that did you get him later,
Uh,
or was it is more better?
I never had a big office overhead. Like, I was renting an office, right? But I learned a lot from Sean and the mistakes that he made that he always talked about. And I heard so many stories back then of people who were like, "Don't ever get a big office with a lease. You can do this from home. Be careful with full time admin staff. Getting and growing too quickly." I was just talking to a guy a couple of days ago who had a $15 million a year business, and I was asking him about what some of the mistakes he made, because he had to really scale down when things slowed down. He had to get rid of his office. He had to fire half of his people, and it was very, very stressful for him for about a year's worth. And just for the last 3 to 6 months, he's coming back. He's coming back, and he's leaner and meaner and a lot smarter in a good way, right? But anyway, I was talking to him about this, and I'm always trying to learn what were the mistakes that people made. So if you see somebody, we all know them, who have had some success, right? And then just grew too quickly and let their overhead get out of control. And all of a sudden they have this huge monster that they have to feed every month. So how can you be nimble and be able to adjust when things do slow down? So, we're doing really well right now. I'm making, more money than I ever have right now in my business. And I have a lean team. I've got 3 full-time employees that are in the U.S. and maybe 4 or 5 virtual assistants. And then I have a bunch of contractors that help me with my podcast editing, or that help with Facebook ads and video website stuff. So, like, if things did slow down, it wouldn't be fun. But I'm not going to have. I'd have to let some people go. I'd probably start with. Well, I wouldn't. I'm not going to say who I would start with.
Yeah, I was
But
like,
like, I would have to let. Yeah, yeah. I would
definitely
have to
this
let some people go.
guy.
That
Yeah.
would be. I don't want to let any of them go. I'm just saying. But I would be able to do it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, it's one of those.
but
Sometimes you gotta put your own mask on first, so you can save other people.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and
And I've seen
sometimes that
too many
means,
people. Yeah, I've seen too many people take way too long to put their own mask on, and it's not okay to try to save a sinking ship and hemorrhage cash, and when you're trying to save things, hoping that it turns around. So one of the things I've learned from Sean is, like, um, how can I keep it simple, right? I work from home. I don't lease an office. My staff, I pay them very well.
Mhm.
But like I can still run my business if I had to let everybody go and just work with me, myself, and I could still do really well. It would suck, but I feel like yeah. And so learning from Sean, you hear his story. He was at the time like $30,000 or $40,000 in overhead every month, and this was 15 years ago. This was a long time ago, and that was a lot back then. But like he would get so frustrated. He tells his story. Like he did one deal and he made 15, 20 grand on it, and he would be ticked because that was only enough to pay his overhead for a few weeks. And he's got to do another deal. And man, I don't want to be in that spot. And this is where recurring revenue is really important. Like how can you set up your business, whether it's residential real estate, commercial real estate, education, software, data, whatever your business is, like if you're serving the real estate industry, how can you get recurring revenue so that when you do have some bad months, you don't have to mortgage your house because you've got some revenue coming in that you can count on. That's really, really important.
So, Joe, I have to ask. So, with everything you've done, right? I mean, you've coached a bunch of people. You've studied. Obviously, you're an artist of your craft, right? You're not just winging it. With all that, like, if you could go back and give advice to a younger Joe, maybe still engineer Joe or something like that, like, what do you think you would have told your past self? What advice would you have given yourself?
I think of a couple things. I I didn't realize quitting my job how much my expenses would increase. Because as a W-2 employee, you've got an employer that's paying your insurance, and I didn't
Mhm.
expect health insurance to cost as much as it did. That was a big surprise for me in '09 when I quit my job. Like I started getting quotes for health insurance, and I was used to paying a couple $100 a month maybe in my health insurance plan with my employer, but now at the time it was like $1,200 a month, so it jumped $1,000, and then you have
And then
taxes.
your wife and kids and all that.
Yeah, so like there were, I knew that $75,000 in a salaried job is not worth $75,000 self-employed income. So I just didn't realize how important that was. So that brings me up to the really big lesson I would tell a younger Joe: read and implement the book Profit First, because
Ooh,
I'd read it
good
a couple
book.
times, didn't implement it. And anybody who's looking to get into business for themselves, there's two books I'd recommend by Michael Michalowicz. The first is Profit First. Don't just read that. Don't just listen to Audible. Don't just read it on Kindle. Get a real book and read it. Make it like the second Bible, free, like Bible number one, right below that, Profit First. And I mean, maybe I'm just kind of being funny, sort of, but that's how important that book is. And then his other book, The Pumpkin Plan, is really good. We were talking about focus before. Pumpkin Plan is about niching down into the niches. And those two books had the biggest impact on me and my business. And so, like, Profit First is all about, normally as entrepreneurs, we look at the checkbook or what's in the checking account balance, and that's what we can spend our money on. That's so like, okay, cool. I got 5 grand in there. I'm going to spend 3 grand on marketing or direct mail or something, right? I got 5 grand. Great. I'll go buy a new computer. And we don't really, that's not a way to run a business. So Profit First takes your revenue. Most of us have it backwards. We take revenue minus expenses equals profit. This turns it around where it's revenue that comes in minus profit equals expenses. And it's a way to force your business to always be profitable. Your business will always be profitable when you run it according to Profit First. So it's a real simple concept, but you take money that comes in and you put it, the first 5, 10%, 15% goes into buckets, for your profit, for taxes, for your own salary. And then whatever you have left is what goes to overhead. Okay. That goes to your marketing or your staff or software or hardware or whatever you need. for your business. And that's really important because you can, once you start making a lot of money, a lot of I wasn't used to paying taxes when I was W-2 employee because I had so many write-offs, right? And my employer was taking out the taxes every 2 weeks. So usually at the end of the year, I'd get a refund, which is stupid to get excited about getting a refund because that means the government was borrowing your money and not paying you any interest for that year. And they're nice enough to give it back to you. But like you're as a self-employed, as an employee, you're not used to paying taxes quarterly. And so as an entrepreneur now, you start making a lot of money and if you don't think about, this is the way I used to do. I used to just take all of my receipts, put them in a shoebox, give it to a bookkeeper at the end of the year,
They love you,
file a
don't they?
couple extensions. You know what I mean? Some of you know what I'm talking about.
Charge you per
file a
hour.
couple
Oh yeah.
and then, okay, fine. Okay, now shoot, I've got to pay what? How much do I owe? 30 grand. And it's already, June or July, maybe August of the next year. And so then, oh man, you got to go make a bunch more money to pay off your last past due taxes, right? Now what happens? You do a couple more extensions and now you owe $50,000 in new taxes because you paid off the old taxes. You made a bunch more money and it just becomes this, you start digging yourself into a bigger and bigger hole. That's what I did. Got into big trouble with all that's another story. I've talked about it on my podcast, but like, Profit First, man, if you've not read that book and it's not enough to read it, don't just listen to it on Audible, get the book, highlight it and hire a bookkeeper. Most of us, Kevin, I'm sure you're better at books than I am, like the bookkeeping. But most of us entrepreneurs are not good at the numbers. We're not good at managing cash flow. We're not good at tracking our expenses. And so you need to, as soon as you can, as soon as you start making money, hire a bookkeeper to manage all your books and to give you reports every week, and hire a Profit First certified bookkeeper. Ooh. And have them, or at least hire a good bookkeeper and say, read this book and implement it. It's not that hard. There's a bank called Relay Financial, I think, Relay Bank or whatever. You just Google Relay Bank, Relay Financial, RELAY. And they're a bank, online bank that is made for Profit First business owners. And it really allows you to get multiple buckets and put money automatically into those buckets,
Talk about a niche in a niche, Joe.
Well, that's
a bank suited for that book. Oh, cool.
Oh yeah. You guys, let me Google it. Relay Financial. Yeah, relayfi.com. Your cash flow can be clearer. Relay is small business banking that puts you in complete control of what you're earning, spending, and saving. And it uses, I don't know if they use the word Profit First because it's probably trademarked, but it's a Profit First bank. And super important. I've had them on my podcast before. So that is big number one lesson learned. And then again, the book Pumpkin Plan really helps figure out, okay, you got to focus on a few things and put all your energy in that. You'll make way more money by being a specialist than a generalist.
Did you do Toilet Paper Entrepreneur?
I haven't read that yet.
So I think that was his first one. And then he did Pumpkin Plan. And then I think there's one, not even a chapter, like a little segment that he talked about Profit First. He says that so many people were like, wait, go back to this? Right? Yeah. Remember like your little chapter in there that book came out of this little comment that he made in one chapter.
I didn't know that was the order of that.
Yeah. And then isn't he also $100 million offer? Or, no, that's Alex. That's a different
That's guy, Alex Hormozy. That's a good book too, if you're into marketing. But here's the deal. If you don't know your numbers, you don't have a real business. Somebody told me that, and it was a slap in the face. I was like, oh, well, I don't know my numbers. I thought I had a real business. I mean, I look at my checking account and I got money in there, and so I hired a bookkeeper. She became my operations manager. This was a lady that I taught how to do real estate. She became an acquisitions manager for me. And then we parted ways as friends and she started doing healthcare management. And then when I started realizing how much trouble I could get in if I don't get a handle on this, I asked her if she would work for me. I paid her whatever she wanted. And I said, I just want you to implement this book, Profit First, for me. And she's like, Joe, I've already read it 3 times. It's like, okay, this was a God thing. And
So you're up
so
to speed. Here you go.
yeah, yeah. She knew exactly the kind of bad manager of cash flow I was. And so I paid her really well. And we've been working together for, I don't know, probably at least 10 years.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, your people, that's a huge investment as your people.
Yeah,
Do you think it was harder, Joe, to get started into real estate or to scale in real estate? Which one do you think was harder?
definitely get started. Once you learn how to do a deal, it's like you can build systems around that. Or it's hard to get started because we all have this fear of failure, a fear of success. And so I think it's harder to get people started to do their first deal. But once you learn how to do a deal, um, there's no two deals that are exactly alike, but there's a lot that you can rinse and repeat on. And so then you just start creating systems or hire somebody to give you their systems that you can swipe and deploy. You can copy and paste their
What is
stuff because
that?
there's people that are already
Entrepreneur
doing
versus
what you want to do.
entrepreneur, right? How can you have your own business on, how can you use somebody's systems to
Yeah.
do your own
Yeah.
spiel? All
There's a
right,
lot
hold
of
on.
coaches out
My,
there, really good
my
coaches.
dog
Not
is,
everybody's a good coach.
come on. My dog is going nuts. I don't know if you hear him barking, and it's
No.
like, okay, it's like,
So there's a lot of good coaches out there that are doing what you want to do. And so go find a good coach that's where you are, that is where you want to be, and pay them some money and have them teach you how to do what they're doing.
Joe, if somebody wants to listen to your podcast, check out any of your coaching, where do you want people to go?
Oh, YouTube I do a lot of videos on YouTube. I do about one video a week, but I just go to YouTube, do a search for Joe McCall. If you're interested in land, I have a book, flipdirtbook.com, flipdirtbook.com. And you just pay shipping and handling. I'll send it out to you. And I also do every 5 days, every week, I do a 5-day challenge on how to flip vacant land. And if you go to flipdirtchallenge.com, you can sign up for that. Flipdirtchallenge.com.
How fun is that?
How
Is
fun
it
is
the
that?
same challenge, or is it a?
Yeah, it's a
Do you come
5-day
up with
challenge. We run it
strategy?
every week.
Oh, uh,
Yeah.
that's fun. So then, I want to ask you this. It sounds like everything's easy, but I know it's not. Um, when you stub your toe in business, right? When you have a bad day or a couple of things are falling or you're retooling your position, or do I keep this guy? Do I hire? Do I fire? When you're going through these little micro forging moments, right? Which we all do in entrepreneurship. Is there something you go back to? Is there a quote? Is there a scripture? Is there a book? Is there a song? Is there something you go to kind of like reground yourself to let you know that it's okay and that you got
Hmm.
this and you could push back up?
Um, and that's a good question. Like I try to read the Bible every day, man, and that helps a lot. And I try to. I'm always asking God for wisdom, and asking Him to help me to avoid mistakes and to do the right thing. So I'm constantly asking God for wisdom, and I really do believe, like 100%, if you ask God for wisdom, He'll give it to you. Um, so yeah, I think being grounded in the Word is really important. I'm always involved with masterminds and coaching programs, hanging out with people that are doing what I want to do. Like I just got back from an event in Orlando 2 days ago, and it was a conference on webinars. It's just how to do webinars. These are sales um, mechanisms, right? And there were a lot of people there that are very successful, have multi-million dollar businesses doing something similar to what I want to do in different industries. And it was just great hanging out with them and learning how to do what they do. I spent a lot of time talking with this one guy who's been in business. Well, he's been doing this internet marketing stuff since 2005. So 20 plus years now. And got to talk to him a lot. And he's been kind of like a coach to me in the past. And so learning things from him, learning things, and then hanging out with other people that have had big dips, and learning what they did to how they got into the problem and how they got out of it. And so I'm constantly like a sponge at these events, trying to network and learn from people, like what's working today, because the market is constantly shifting and changing. So I really do believe in investing in education and mentoring, and really trying hard to like see the landmines that are out there and avoid them. And many times, like, you can avoid many costly mistakes by learning from people that have made those mistakes in the past, and can give you advice of like, hey, what, you're starting to have some success now, watch out for this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love it. And I would even, that's also why I like history, right? You could look at
Yeah.
something that's done and then kind of reverse engineer and be like, oh, that's what he did.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. If you
so,
don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it.
well, I think I'm just fascinated with leadership, like, and really all entrepreneurship is leadership, right? It's the same
Yeah.
stuff. We just kind of say,
Oh
what are
yeah.
you a leader of? Like I did a thing about Greek silver, which was after the Battle of Marathon, the Persians versus the Greeks. I did one on the Battle of Alesia, which was Julius Caesar. You come up with your
Okay.
little metrics that come out. Dude, I love this stuff. It's just fascinating to see how people have handled it.
Yeah,
Joe,
that's interesting.
I am thrilled to death that you jumped on. Like, for a guy who's achieved so much, like just how down to earth you really are with all this stuff. I think it's pretty cool. So you said you
Yeah.
like the
Thanks, man.
Bible and you like to jump into it. I asked this before to somebody else because he also, like, what do you read? Like, what's your go to?
I usually just read straight through it. Like I might read straight through the New Testament. I might start with the Old Testament and read all the way through.
So you're gonna
So it's
chew
just
through
different all the
Numbers
time.
and Leviticus and all that stuff.
Oh, I love reading the Old Testament. Yeah.
Well, I like the stories. Like I like the Genesis. I like the Judges. I like Joshua. But there's a lot of stuff in there.
Well, yeah, and it's not as crazy as you might think. I would encourage everybody who's interested in reading the Bible, get a good. There's one of my favorite study Bibles. It's called the Life Application Study Bible, and that gives a lot of historical context. So if you could take a class or get a study Bible that helps you understand the historical context behind all of this stuff, because you might think, well, what was this for? Why was this important to them? And it helps you understand the New Testament a lot better. If you understand the Jewish history, if you understand the culture of the back then in that time and the context of all this stuff, the Bible really comes alive when you read that. And so I love reading the Old Testament just as much as the New Testament, because it it makes the whole New Testament make sense even more. And God, if you study God in the Old Testament, like, he talked a lot back then, you know, and he had a lot of cool things to say. And he wasn't this angry God that just brought hell and fire and brimstone on everybody back then. It's not like some people think, well, God of the Old Testament is this angry old guy, and the God of the New Testament is this soft, fluffy, cloudy baby Jesus, nice, who loves everybody. It's the same God all the way through. So, I don't read the Old Testament and think of God as this angry God. He's a God of compassion and mercy, and he shows love to generations, thousands of generations of people who love him. Right. So, like, he's patient, he's kind, he loves his people. And it's a story it's a story of redemption all the way through. So it makes me fall in love with Jesus in the New Testament more when you understand the Old Testament. I think people, ignore the Old Testament to their peril. So I frequently read the whole Bible all the way through from beginning to end. And I've tried the reading plans that take you from this book to one chapter in this book, one chapter in that book, all the way through. And then you kind of, it's good, nothing wrong with that, but you kind of lose the context of all of this if you're just hopping around. Oh, and let me say one more thing too. I would encourage, like, you can buy chronological Bibles that, like, so the Bible isn't set up chronologically. So you can, most of it is, but so you can read the chronologically all of the books in order. And then if you get a commentary, or again, like the Life Application Study Bible is really good for this. It can give you the historical context of this stuff and why it's important and how it can apply to your life. That's what I enjoy doing that. Make sense?
Yeah. Well, that's also where I'm thinking of probably your engineer OCD mind. You have to do a start to finish of the Bible.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a Proverbs guy because I think that's the most practical knowledge to pull out. Like today, whatever day it is, that's the Proverbs I read for that day.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you find a little line in there that you're like, oh, that's talking about this situation. I need to do this. Like, it's just, I like how it talks.
Well, the cool thing too is when you're reading the Bible over and over again, you might think, doesn't it get old if you've read it 100 times, whatever. It's like every time I read it, I find something new. I find something cool and encouraging and like, wow, I didn't see that before. I didn't look at it that way before. And this is why I don't like to highlight my Bible. I don't highlight, mark anything up because I just like being surprised, as I'm, oh yeah, this is cool. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's awesome. I do highlight, so maybe I underline. But yeah, that's awesome.
Well, you should try reading through a Bible, whatever translation you like. The best translation is the one that you read. That's what my pastor says. So like read through a Bible that's not been highlighted or marked and maybe try a different translation because you'll see new things and you'll be like, oh, that was cool. Or I like the way that they said it here, or I didn't. It'll just give you a different, fresh perspective. Like an example of this.
I started with. Now I'm a New King James kind of guy.
Yeah, you should try. We're talking about the Bible. The New Living Translation is really good.
Okay.
It's not a full blown like loosey goosey translation,
Because isn't that like the hippie Bible?
Well, no, there's other Bibles that I would call hippie Bibles. The New Living Translation is I like it a lot, and I grew up on New American Standard Bible, right? But again, whatever translation you're reading, that's the best one. And but I still like reading from a Bible that's not marked up because, like God gave manna to the Israelites, and they couldn't keep their manna for longer than one day or else it'd get moldy. And so I think sometimes maybe, and I'm taking this out of context, I don't know, but like sometimes that manna from yesterday is not good manna for today. Right. So like, not that it's bad manna, but I'm just saying like maybe what really blessed you a year ago, 6 months ago, was for then. And there's something else that God wants to show you when you're reading the Bible today that you might miss because it wasn't highlighted or you're not reading it like with fresh new eyes for what God wants to tell you today. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Kind of like the
renewing. That's my philosophy on it.
All right. So Joe, we're wrapping up here.
Yeah.
This is coming out at the end of the year. So like, how do you do like some of your goal planning, right? How do you assess how successful you are this year and like what's next? Like, how do you do some of your version of this? Like, what are some tips for planning your next year?
Man, I don't do that much, because I've learned I got to know my numbers. And so I'm looking at my numbers every single week. And I don't really look at it on an annual basis or even a quarterly basis. I do have some annual goals, like revenue numbers that we want to hit. So I don't know. I mean, I am meeting with my team in about a month here in St. Louis. And we're going to talk about what did we accomplish in 25? What do we want to accomplish in 26? I don't know. I've never been a big goals, write them down type of guy. And maybe I should be,
It's
but
actually a little
I,
surprising.
yeah, I think I don't do it because I've been disappointed in myself, um, in the past for like, I like the freedom and the flexibility of kind of living day to day, right? I don't want to be stuck in a rut. And so, when I've developed goals in the past, and I've written them down and I didn't accomplish them, I get discouraged and like, oh, that was dumb. So I just avoid it. But I'm not saying I don't have like goals and targets. Um, I do, but they're in my head. They're not written down. And like right now, I'm making in my businesses, we're making more money than I ever have, and we have some goals to scale and to grow. And I got my team some big rewards I'm going to give my whole team once we reach some of these numbers.
Oh,
And so
that's
that's
awesome.
fun. So every day we're looking at, okay, what do we need to do to get to this big, hairy, audacious goal? So we do have one, but I don't, if anything, I would say um, I break things down into chunks, into quarters, into months, into weeks. And I really do track my numbers every week, not every month, not by annual, not by quarter, um, every week. And yeah,
Joe, like I'm enjoying just having a conversation with you. This is pretty awesome. So I want to thank you so much for jumping on, sharing your wisdom on
thanks,
all
man.
this stuff, from where you've come from, watching your dad's toilet business, toilet cleaning business, all the way up to this empire that you've created. Uh, Dude, it's awesome. It's awesome
Thank
seeing
you.
the before and after, and then how down to earth you are about all this stuff. Um, I think it's fascinating to see the people who have been giants, but then it's like we know some local people here. Their overhead is so giant. Any of this freedom or any of this, just being able to take off for 2 months to go on an RV trip, can they do it? No, man. You're a slave to your own business. Like
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah. You
really
got to be
freedom.
flexible. Yeah.
So
Well,
again,
thank
Joe,
you,
thank you
Kevin.
so
Thanks
much
for
for
having me
jumping
on,
on,
man.
and we'll talk soon.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, man. We'll see you.
Hey, that was fun. I told you that's a good guy, right? All right, so I'm going to take a look over here at my notes. One, I thought kind of paying homage to his dad was pretty awesome, right? So when he was talking about his dad had this calling to become a janitor, right? I mean, you imagine going home and being like, hey, you know what I want to do the rest of my life? But he found that a business and was able to take it and be he sold the largest cleaning business. That's pretty awesome. What an interesting way that all kind of transpired. But having that entrepreneurship blood, finding that leader, somebody who's forged a path, gets you interested. So I didn't know Joe was an engineer when he started, but it is fascinating. But now it also makes sense a little bit of his brain, how he looks and identifies and does the research, and then breaks it down, studies it in a sense like reverse engineering, so he could create his own business, his own process. I think the genius of everything that he's done is the riches are in the niches, right? So find a niche and then find a niche of a niche. And then if you do that, you could go an inch wide but a mile deep, and just become the true expert in each of those areas. So, man, I mean, wholesaling lease options, the land stuff that he's doing now, so many awesome things that he threw out there. I thought it was neat when he recognized his life moment, right? His forging moment was, hey, do I want to be this type of lifestyle where I have all this overhead and all these people, or do I want really to embrace this life by design concept, right? Just and I think the key thing he pulled out of there is asking better questions. And then when you ask those on yourself as well, great. How am I answering? How am I showing up? Awesome. Um, and then how can you do none of this? So understanding the process and then understanding how you could uh, pick yourself out, because it's marketing, automation, and delegation. I mean, this is freaking gold. And I thought the answer there was success by the amount of hugs. If you don't know it, I'm a hugger. If you've ever been to any of my live events, you're getting hugged. Like that is part of the process. So it is awesome to see success measured by hugs. Joe, man, thank you for jumping on. Be sure to follow Joe on his socials. and also to jump on and check out his podcast. So, guys, thank you so much for jumping on. And remember, dream big, act accordingly.